That's okay, I like shadows. Hello, Eddie. Thanks for coming. Well, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself before I begin the real reason for being here. I live on a farm in Lawrence County with my family, and we raise cattle. I also work for a local hospital, been there for 27 years, and I'm proud to say that all but one of my family's here this morning with us, so I appreciate all but two, I guess. Aaron's working and Brian's away for a time. But, you know, it's probably December 16th, 238 years ago, I would imagine would be a cool, brisk day in New England states. But on December 16th, 238 years ago, was the day that Samuel Adams and John Hancock led some patriots to the Boston Harbor, where they boarded 3 ships and proceeded to throw 342 chests of tea overboard. Of course, you know, we call that today the Boston Tea Party. And today, as we look back at that, they were there to not only protest the undue taxation, but also to tell of their displeasure with the lack of representation in the British Parliament. Today, I think we can find many similarities to that of 1773. We're taxed on our income today, we're taxed on our purchases, and we're taxed on our property. Our federal government has imposed heavy taxes and enacted regulations on nearly every aspect of our lives, from the air we breathe, the fertilizer we use, to the vehicles we drive. We're bound by oppressive rules. And if those rules are violated, they can ruin our business and even land us in jail. We even have the Department of Labor today working on an act that will reduce and restrict how your own children work on your farm. That'll affect me and my family too. And that's wrong for the government to do something like that. Where's our representation in DC to roll back these unnecessary regulations, to roll back the taxes, and to reduce the size of our government? The federal government has taken steps to enter into treaties with the United Nations that will tighten the regulations further to restrict us, even to the point where the raising of our own children will be taken away from us and given over to the government. Folks, we can't let that happen. Our elected leaders are exceeding their constitutional authority given to them. For instance, in January 2012, the incandescent light bulb will no longer be manufactured in the United States. Why is that? It's because our Congress has decided, in our best interest, it would be better to use a bulb that generates less heat. A bulb that if contains enough mercury that if broken, requires a hazmat team for cleanup. Now, you may be one that likes those new bulbs, and that's okay. That's a freedom of choice. The point is, the federal government has taken that freedom of choice away from you and me. And they manage in the process to shut down an entire industry. That doesn't sound like job creation to me. Now, what about the individual concerns of residents of this Missouri 7th District, the voice of our neighbors, those singled out for punishment for violating government agency regulations? They've fallen on deaf ears. Should not each and every citizen, whether born or unborn, be represented? Thomas Jefferson said, "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent." Folks, we've remained silent for far too long. And now the second reason that I think today is a special day. Since November 2010, Denise and I have talked a lot. We've prayed a lot about the things that we should be involved with. And after about 9 months of contemplation, we determined together that the door of opportunity to represent and enter the race for Missouri 7th is open. Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution lays out the qualifications of a representative. And based on these qualifications, I qualified. And I'm an American, just as you all here today. And when you look at the word American, the last 4 letters are I-C-A-N. And those 4 simple letters can be used to form 2 words. I can. Folks, based on the Constitution, I can. And I will. And we must unite together, just as the Boston Tea Party patriots did in 1773, to raise our voices united to be heard in Washington, D.C., and we must elect constitutional conservatives to represent us. In 2012, we have an opportunity to elect a president who will follow the Constitution. We also have a chance to elect a U.S. Senator who will follow the Constitution, and we'll also have an opportunity to elect a representative from Missouri's 7th District who is a constitutional conservative, Ronald Reagan Republican, and I want to be that individual. I want to be your voice in Washington, D.C., so will you help me spread the word?
Yeah.
On August 7, 2010, elect Mike Moon for Congress.
Go get it.
Now we do have a minute for questions. If you have a question, I'll acknowledge you. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
Fair tax.
The fair tax. We have a taxing structure today that is cumbersome. Over what, 60-something thousand pages of code that even the IRS director can't interpret it. He has someone else do his own taxes. I believe it was Timothy Geithner who recently said he can't even understand a TurboTax. So when you have folks in the government who aren't smart enough to interpret the code that they've actually helped develop, we've got a problem there with our taxing structure. Our founding fathers introduced a tax on consumables. And then I believe it was in 1911, 1913, we changed to a taxing of income. We can't tax on at least 2 different levels and expect prosperity to continue in our country. I believe that we need a simple, a transparent, and a fair tax. That's, in essence, the fair tax name. It goes back to a consumption tax, one that our founding fathers would have, I think, been appreciative of and promoted. So I am a proponent of the fair tax. However, we have some folks who are trying to change the way the fair tax HR 25 will be introduced and add loopholes, starting the progress all over again to get a cumbersome tax code, and that's wrong. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be fair. I will support a tax like that. Yes, sir.
Would you support something like a 999 as a bridge to that?
A 999 changes nothing in the way that we're taxed, actually. It just changes the tax, the amount the tax is being allayed or assessed. I don't think that's going to get us any further along. How about a 111 maybe? And I'm kidding. But
I say something like that. I mean,
well,
you're going to have something to bring the flat taxers and the fair taxers
sure.
together.
Yeah.
You're going to have something that gets the economy growing until you can get the 16th taken care of.
Yes, and I'm not totally opposed to that, but I haven't determined whether 999 would be exactly what I would support. But I do know one thing: we've got to stop the spending at our federal level. We could send a lot less tax money to Washington, D.C. if we would rid ourselves of agencies like the Department of Labor trying to change farm laws. The agricultural department is the same way. They're doing things that are anti-farmers. And then you've got the education department that tries to teach our children what we as parents should have the authority and responsibility to do. And then you have the Department of Interior and the Department of Energy. And should I say oops for the rest of them? No, they are nameable. But I think that's the place we need to begin too. We've got to go across the board, at least reducing the amount of money that they spend departmentally, and then gradually eliminating those departments that are not necessary from the federal government.
Now, do you have to wait until you've got the fair tax in place before you do that?
Not at all. No,
how do you grow the private sector at a fast enough rate to absorb what you're cutting the public sector?
We've got to reduce the taxation at the same time.
Right.
Because if you're a business owner and you have those undue regulations and heavy taxation, you don't have any excess money to invest in employees or raw materials to produce goods and services. So I think you've got to look at that first and foremost. Any other questions? And thank you for that. I'm so proud of you for coming. Thank you very much to come out on a chilly day like today. It thrills my heart to know that I have supporters like you. I want to ask you something else too, though, because this is essential to winning a campaign. We probably won't win it with money. We may not win it outright with name recognition, but you know folks that I'll never meet probably you have influence on people that I don't have the same influence on. So will you go to those folks you know and encourage them to take a look at Mike Moon? I've got a website. If you'll have to take some of my cards, you're welcome to pass them out. They can call me and I'll pick up the phone. If they send me an email, I'll answer it as soon as I can get back to it. But I promise you, as your representative, I won't have a deaf ear. I'll communicate with you if you'll communicate with me, and that's all I got to say. But let's make it happen. We can do that. We've got about 240 days, and let's work hard, and let's get this contest won. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.